Most men accept the lie that losing your balance is simply what happens with age. Dead wrong. What you're experiencing isn't inevitable, it's the consequence of 5 specific mistakes that have become invisible to you. These errors aren't just robbing your stability, they're stealing your independence, your confidence, your very autonomy as a man. The human body maintains remarkable adaptability well into your 80s and beyond, but you must take responsibility for correcting these mistakes. The choice is simple. Address them now or surrender to dependence later. Look around you. The modern world has created a tragic irony for men like you. While our lifespans have extended dramatically, our movement patterns have contracted to the point of dangerous limitation. The consequences, catastrophic. This sedentary existence isn't just uncomfortable, it's an existential threat to your independence. I've watched countless men surrender to their recliners, believing they're protecting what little energy they have left. One gentleman I worked with, let's call him Richard, spent 40 years building houses, only to find himself afraid to walk to his own mailbox. The world shrinks, he told me, first your neighborhood, then your home, then just your chair. What he didn't realize was that his supposed sanctuary was actually his prison. What's happening in your body is a manifestation of a deeper psychological principle. What you don't use, you lose. The vestibular system, your body's balance center, requires constant stimulation to maintain its neural pathways. When you surrender movement, you aren't conserving strength, you're actively dismantling it. This isn't just biology, it's a perfect metaphor for life itself. Stability comes through engagement, not retreat. The ancient wisdom traditions understood this paradox long before modern medicine. Confucius noted that to know what you know and what you do not know, that is true knowledge. Most men don't know they're making this mistake because society has normalized immobility as a natural consequence of aging. It's not. It's a choice, unconscious perhaps, but a choice nonetheless. So what's the practical path forward? Begin with 5 minutes, just 5 minutes of deliberate movement targeting your balance systems each morning. Stand on one foot while brushing your teeth. Walk heel to toe across your kitchen floor. These seemingly simple actions send powerful signals to your brain. This territory still matters. Maintain these neural pathways. One of my clients started with just standing up during every television commercial break. No heroics, just interrupting the pattern of extended sitting. Within weeks, his confidence in navigating uneven surfaces had dramatically improved. Not because of some medical breakthrough, but because he reclaimed the ancient human birthright of movement. Remember, your body responds to the demands you place on it. Stop moving, and it assumes movement is no longer necessary. Resume moving, and it will rebuild those pathways with remarkable efficiency, even in your 70s, 80s, or beyond. I see this pattern constantly in men our age. They might walk occasionally, perhaps even lift some weights for their upper body, but they've abandoned the fundamental musculature that keeps a human being upright. This isn't merely unfortunate, it's catastrophic for your long-term independence. I remember working with a retired military officer, a man who had once commanded respect through his very posture. When I met him, he was using a cane and shuffling sideways downstairs. I still exercise, he insisted, showing me his still impressive biceps. But when I asked him to stand from a chair without using his hands, he couldn't do it. His quadriceps and glutes, the very muscles designed to lift his body against gravity, had atrophied to near uselessness. There's something profoundly telling about this situation. Carl Jung would recognize it as symbolic. We've become top-heavy, valuing the appearance of strength over its substance. The muscles that literally ground us to the earth have been forgotten. This reflects our modern tendency to value what's visible and impressive over what's functionally essential. Consider the evolutionary perspective. Your ancestors didn't perform isolated bicep curls. They squatted to harvest food, lunged to hunt, twisted to gather. The entire posterior chain, from your calves through your hamstrings, glutes, and into your lower back, developed as an integrated system specifically to keep you stable while moving through variable terrain. When these muscles weaken, your margin for error in everyday movements becomes dangerously narrow. The tragedy is amplified by well-meaning family members who rush to provide assistive devices, canes, walkers, raised toilet seats, without addressing the root cause. Yes, these tools have their place, but not as substitutes for reclaiming your physical sovereignty. They should be temporary bridges, not permanent crutches. The path forward isn't comfortable, but it is simple. Begin with the most fundamental movement pattern humans possess, the squat. Not with weights, not with complicated equipment. Simply lowering yourself to a chair and standing back up, repeatedly. If that's too challenging initially, use your hands for assistance, gradually reducing your reliance on them. One gentleman I worked with began with just 5 chair stands each morning and evening. He couldn't do them without using his armrests at first. 6 weeks later, he performed 15 perfect squats without support. His children noticed the change before he did. Dad's walking differently, they said. His entire physical presence had transformed, not through some miracle, but through the consistent engagement of his body's natural stability systems. This might seem trivial compared to exercise or strength training, but make no mistake, your feet represent your literal foundation. They contain 26 bones each, 33 joints, and over 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments. They're engineering marvels specifically designed to provide stability, sensory feedback, and adaptation to terrain. Yet most men have imprisoned these remarkable structures in what amount to sensory deprivation chambers for decades. I once consulted with a retired physics professor who had developed severe balance issues. Brilliant man, could explain quantum mechanics with ease, but he couldn't walk across his lawn without fear of falling. When I examined his footwear, I found he'd been wearing thick-soled, heavily cushioned shoes for 20 years. They're comfortable, he insisted, but comfort had come at a devastating price. His brain was receiving virtually no feedback from the ground beneath him. This illustrates a profound psychological principle that extends beyond just balance. Comfort often comes at the expense of capability. Your nervous system operates on information, specifically proprioception, the sense of where your body exists in space. Your feet are dense with receptors designed to send continuous data to your brain about the surface you're navigating. Deny that information, and your brain must operate in a partial vacuum. Think about this from an evolutionary perspective. For most of human history, we walked barefoot or in minimal coverings. The sensory information from our feet informed our entire movement pattern. Now we've muted that critical channel of information, and we wonder why our balance deteriorates. The insidious aspect of this mistake is that it creates a dangerous feedback loop. As sensation diminishes, stability decreases. As stability decreases, you seek more supportive footwear, further reducing sensation. Eventually, you're balancing on memory foam pillows and wondering why you feel disconnected from the ground. The remedy begins with reconnection. Start by simply spending time barefoot at home on different surfaces, carpet, hardwood, tile. Let your feet reacquaint themselves with varied textures. Then progress to specific exercises. Spread your toes deliberately, pick up marbles with your feet, roll a golf ball under your arch. These aren't trivial activities. They're neural recalibration for systems that have been dormant. A financial analyst I worked with took this seriously, beginning with just 10 minutes of barefoot time daily. He progressed to walking on varied surfaces in his backyard, then to shoes with thinner, more flexible soles. It felt strange at first, he told me, almost uncomfortably intense. But within a month, his awareness of his body position had dramatically improved. His wife noticed he no longer reached for walls when walking down hallways. I've encountered countless men who meticulously maintain their cars, checking the oil, rotating the tires, using the precise fuel octane recommended, yet take a haphazard approach to the substances they put in their own bodies. They're shocked when I explain that many commonly prescribed medications list dizziness and loss of balance among their side effects, not as rare complications but as expected outcomes. One gentleman, a retired engineer who approached problems with mathematical precision, came to me confused about his sudden instability. He'd started a new blood pressure medication, and within days felt unsteady on his feet. When I suggested a possible connection, he was incredulous. But the doctor would have told me, he insisted. Would they? In our 7-minute appointment medical culture, these crucial details often go undiscussed. This points to a deeper psychological truth. We've outsourced responsibility for our bodily knowledge to specialists who, through no fault of their own, cannot possibly know your unique experience in your unique body. This represents a profound alienation from ourselves, a phenomenon the existentialists would recognize immediately as a modern tragedy. Equally concerning is how many men are chronically dehydrated. The connection to balance isn't immediately obvious until you understand that your vestibular system, the delicate mechanism in your inner ear responsible for spatial orientation, depends on proper fluid levels to function correctly. Even mild dehydration can compromise this system's precision. I worked with a former airline pilot who prided himself on his spatial awareness. Yet in his 70s, he'd begun experiencing momentary dizziness when standing. His medication routine had him taking 4 different prescriptions each morning, followed by just enough coffee to swallow the pills. By mid-afternoon, the cumulative dehydrating effects left him wobbly. No one had ever connected these dots for him. The practical solution begins with creating a medication journal. Record not just what you take and when, but how you feel in the hours afterward. Look for patterns. Does your unsteadiness correlate with specific medications or combinations? Then speak with your doctor about adjusting timing or dosages. Never make these changes independently. For hydration, the approach must be equally systematic. Most men wait until they feel thirsty, but thirst sensation diminishes with age. Instead, build hydration into your daily structure, a full glass of water with each meal and medication, another between meals. One retired teacher I worked with placed water glasses at specific locations around his home, visual reminders that dramatically increased his intake and within weeks improved his steadiness. I've seen it countless times. A man experiences a near fall or moments of instability, and something profound shifts in his psychology. He begins to move differently, tentatively, fearfully, creating the very instability he's trying to avoid. It's a cruel irony that the protective mechanism becomes the primary threat. I recall working with a former construction foreman, a man who had spent decades confidently traversing unfinished buildings and scaffolding. After a minor fall in his garden, he developed what he called his old man shuffle, short, uncertain steps with his eyes fixed downward. "I'm just being careful," he explained, but his careful movement pattern was actually increasing his fall risk dramatically. This illustrates a fundamental psychological principle that extends far beyond balance. What you fear, you create. When you move with anticipatory anxiety, your muscles tense inappropriately, your breathing becomes shallow, and your focus narrows dangerously. The smooth, rhythmic movement patterns that once served you are replaced by jerky, disconnected motions that actually reduce stability. Carl Jung would recognize this as the shadow manifesting physically. The fear you refuse to acknowledge consciously emerges in your body. You don't overcome this shadow by ignoring it, but by integrating it, acknowledging the fear while refusing to let it dictate your movement. The biochemistry here is fascinating. Fear triggers cortisol release, which when chronic impairs the cerebellum's ability to coordinate complex movements. In essence, your anxiety literally makes you less coordinated. Meanwhile, the constant muscular tension that accompanies fear creates fatigue in precisely the stabilizing muscles you need most for balance. The remedy begins with breathing, deliberate diaphragmatic breathing that interrupts the fear response. Before attempting any movement that triggers anxiety, take 3 deep breaths, expanding your abdomen fully. This simple practice deactivates the sympathetic nervous system's fight-or-flight response that's hijacking your coordination. Then, implement progressive exposure, the gold standard psychological approach for overcoming fear. Start with movements that trigger minimal anxiety, master them completely, then gradually increase the challenge. A retired professor I worked with began simply by practicing standing up from his favorite chair without using the armrests, first with someone nearby, then independently. He progressed to walking short distances without his cane, initially in his home, then in less controlled environments. The fear doesn't disappear, he told me, but it no longer controls me. Within months, he was confidently navigating the farmer's market that he'd avoided for years. The truth about balance isn't merely physical, it's existential. These 5 mistakes represent not just threats to your stability, but challenges to your very freedom as a man. Each day you postpone addressing them, your world contracts further. The chaos of physical decline isn't inevitable. It's what happens when you abdicate responsibility for your own body. There's profound meaning in standing upright against entropy. It's the oldest human story, the hero who refuses to bow to circumstance, who confronts his limitations and transcends them through deliberate action. Your body is waiting for your command to rebuild these pathways, these connections to the earth and to your own physical sovereignty. Ask yourself, will you be the author of your mobility, or merely its witness? The choice, as always, is yours, and it must be made daily, with the full weight of intention that befits a man who refuses to surrender what matters most.